and we will get started. So thank you. Thank you all for being here. This is the third of three, so our final session in this series that is part of the Your Hometown Holiday campaign. That is a partnership between the town of Lincoln, the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce, and the downtown Beamsville. We have had a lot of fun presenting this series to you and very much appreciate being asked to present to you and for all of you for being a part of it. So my name is Peggy Harnock. I am the founder and social media strategist at the Social Gourmet. We are a boutique social media marketing agency. We're located in Grimsby, and we work exclusively with small businesses and community organizations throughout the Golden Horseshoe and across Canada to help them build and manage their online communities. So thank you again for being here. Today's topic is one that was much requested: the marathon versus the sprint, organic versus paid social. So a few things that we're going to talk about today. From an organic versus paid social perspective, we're going to weigh the pros and cons of each, which one may or may not be right for your business and your organization. And we're also, by popular request, going to talk about social media analytics and insights, specifically for Facebook and Instagram, so that you will know what to look for and where, how to measure, how often to measure, and what success may or may look like for your business. All right, so let's get started. We have a few housekeeping things to cover before we dive into our topics. If you've been here before, you have seen these housekeeping tips, so I will do my best to speed through them. If you have not already muted your microphone, please do so. It just eliminates background noise, which we all have, barking dogs, crying children, Amazon ringing the doorbell, just happens. Also, if you have not already opened the chat feature at the bottom of your screen, please do so and just take a quick minute if you're comfortable to introduce yourself. Just something brief like Peggy from the Social Gourmet is great, just so we know who is in the room with us today. So we have Dawn from the Pilates Experience, Kelly from the Lincoln Public Library. Kelly, I haven't seen you in a very long time. Happy to see you again. Nicole from Big Brothers Big Sisters, Amanda from McNally House, Jeanette from the Lincoln Chamber. We also are going to just give a virtual round of applause to Jeanette. Jeanette's the project manager for the Your Hometown Holiday campaign this year. So kudos to Jeanette for all her hard work. Katie from Custom Sign Lab, Chris from Rustic Catering, Nicole from Night Archives. I love that I am recognizing faces and names, not only from the community, people that I used to actually see face to face sometimes back when we were allowed to do that, but also sort of repeat customers to this series. Great to see everyone this morning, so welcome. A member of the Social Gourmet team will also be monitoring the chat. Those of you who've been here before know that Jake is our Seneca College communications student. He did a co-op placement with us in high school, and he now works part-time 2 mornings a week here with us in the office. So Jake's going to be monitoring the chat for you today. If you have technical questions, video, audio, etc., please address those to him. And he's also going to be monitoring the chat for questions. So if, as I'm speaking, you have some questions that you would like to have addressed during the Q&A session of today's workshop, please drop them there, and he's going to make a nice organized little list for me here in my second screen so we can address those for you. The PDF worksheet that you will have received with your confirmation email, if you've got it printed out, great. If you don't have it at your fingertips, I'm just going to ask Jake if he can quickly drop the PDF worksheet into the chat for you. You can utilize it or not. It's completely up to you. It's really basic in its layout. It's really just meant to spark some conversation as well as to sort of guide your thought process in that sense. Today's session will be 30 to 40 minutes. We will allow at least 20 minutes for questions, again, followed by a Q&A session. And again, drop those questions in the chat throughout. If I'm speaking about something that you have an immediate question about, drop it there, and we will do our best to address all the questions at the end of the session in the Q&A portion. Also, the session will be recorded. You will have seen that pop up on your screen. We tell you that for 2 reasons. One is that all of these sessions will in fact be posted to the Lincoln Chamber website within the next few days and or weeks. I don't know the exact timeline on that, but let's call it near future. but they will be posted as a reference for you. So if you need to revisit something, or if you weren't able to attend one or all of the previous sessions, those will be available for you. We also just FYI you, because some of you have your cameras on, which is totally fine. I love seeing your smiling faces and your Christmas trees in the background. But if you're not comfortable having your face be a part of that recording that will be on the Lincoln Chambers website, then please feel free to turn your camera off. It will not in any way impede your ability to participate in today's session. So we can absolutely go from there. All right, so if you need to turn your camera off, please feel free. So let's dive in quickly. I will chat with you about the Social Gourmet because I know so many of you, so we're going to rush through this and just tell you quickly that since 2016, we have helped dozens of small businesses and community organizations take their social media to the next level. We strongly believe here at the Social Gourmet in trust building and community building to grow your presence online. We built the Social Gourmet on that foundation, and our goal is to help you, our clients, and customers do the same. So we are a remote team that includes a social media strategist, that's myself, also includes a graphic designer, content writer, photographer, and digital ad specialist. Our services, in a nutshell, include social media audits, social media marketing strategy, which is not only very important, but very popular nowadays. This is one of our most popular service offerings at the moment. Graphic design, content marketing, digital ads, as well as coaching and training. Similar to these types of workshops, we do workshops for community organizations who have teams managing their social. We also do one-on-one training. So if there's something specific that you would like to learn for your business to kind of up-level your skills, then we can help you with that. So let's talk about goals and objectives for today. Again, so much to cover. So we're going to explain the difference briefly between organic and paid social media strategies, because there is a very marked difference. We're going to address some of the pros and cons of organic social media. We're also going to discuss the pros and cons of paid social campaigns. And we're going to discuss social media analytics and insights for your business, right? So a lot to cover. Buckle up, here we go. Actually, before we buckle up and here we go, I just want to ask you in the chat, because we're going to start with the paid and organic social side of things, and I just wanted to kind of get a read on the room, so to speak. When it comes to paid social, so boosted ads, ad campaigns, for those of you who have dipped your toe into that before, just let me know what some of your challenges or stumbling blocks have been in that regard, or if you haven't yet taken the step into paid ads, boosted posts, etc., what it is that is sort of holding you back, and again, what the fear might be there, if any. If you're comfortable in the chat, just to kind of let me know where you're at in that situation in terms of paid social specifically. Okay, well, there's a stumbling block. Amanda says Facebook not accepting the ad. Okay, yes, fair enough. That would be considered a stumbling block. And Dawn is saying my boosted Facebook post doesn't always get put on Instagram and I can't seem to control that. Okay, so yeah, these are all things that are absolutely stumbling blocks, and certainly things that we can address in the Q&A session. Because the rules and part of this, especially for you, Amanda, is going back to that whole terms of service, community standards, rules and guidelines, etc. last week from the homework, which is that very long legal document that nobody wants to read. Part of that is understanding the types of ads that Facebook does and does not allow. So I think these are valid, and we're going to address some of them throughout the session, and some of them I can address for you in the Q&A. And Nicole is saying more people see the ads, which is great, but not everyone will like, share, or visit the link, which is true. Absolutely. So objectives are going to be important as well, determining those. Okay, so that's great. Thank you for sharing that. I just wanted to make sure that we did address some of those, and we will. If you have specific questions about them, then we can chat about them in the Q&A. So let's first talk about organic versus paid social. And what the heck is the difference? Because a lot of times I'm talking about it and people aren't necessarily sure of what specifically that means. So organic social is defined as social media activity without a paid promotion. So it is the daily trust building and community building that is required to maintain an online presence for your business or your organization. Paid social is defined as ads, boosted posts, or sponsored content that businesses or organizations pay a social network to deliver to an audience beyond their immediate followers. So that's fairly cut and dried. The one thing that I do want to quantify is that organic social can in fact be part of a service that you pay for with either a marketing agency or someone who freelances in social media. So just because you're paying for that service doesn't necessarily mean it's organic social. A large portion of what we do for our clients is organic social, and it is that daily trust building, that daily community building, that brand awareness piece. So while they are paying for service, the definition of paid social is actually putting ad spend behind one or multiple specific pieces of content, if that clarifies a little bit. So speaking of organic social, which I'm a little biased towards because I love organic social. Don't let anyone tell you organic social is dead. It is not. Unequivocally, it is not. I promise you it is not. We have built our entire business on the fact that organic social is not dead. So let's talk about the pros and cons, because listen, even though I'm passionate about it, there are pros and cons. Organic social is the marathon. And the pros are that you get to build community, you get to build trust, you get to establish brand consistency, which is important. You get to tell stories and share successes. That tell stories goes back to our first session, which is tell your story. What's your story? How did you get from point A to point B? Another pro of organic social media is that it is a direct line to your most loyal customers and clients. They're already following you. Organic social is the most valuable two-way marketing tool you could have. People who are interested in your business, your product, your service, your organization are already following you, and your organic social is a direct line to them. So the cons, which there always are, is, and I need to quantify cons because I don't necessarily think all of these are cons, but it depends on your perspective. But the cons are that organic social is a long haul strategy. It is the marathon. I liken it to building a business. Building a business is a marathon. It's not a sprint. I say this to my clients all the time. You don't open your business, put a sign on your front door and have the money truck pull up and all of a sudden you're successful. That's just not how it works, although that would be nice. But it's not how it works. And it is a long haul strategy to build a business and to build a successful organic social media following and community. It does require an ongoing commitment of time and energy. Again, it depends whether you think that's a pro or a con or not. There is a commitment required, but if you're committed to growing your business, then that ongoing commitment of time and energy for an organic social strategy is going to be required. The other thing that is very often noted as a con is that ROI, or return on investment, is difficult to measure. However, I challenge this, and I challenge this heavily. I challenge it heavily for several reasons, because ROI, while it's difficult to quantify in terms of how much time, how much money, how much energy did I put into this, and what did I get back out of it, is much easier to determine with a paid campaign. ROI on organic social is something that to me is not even necessary to measure. And I say that because from a accounting perspective, so let's flip this a little bit and look at it from accounting perspective. A marketing expense would be considered business cards, print ads, signage, t-shirts, mugs, any type of swag that you're doing for your business. Those would all be considered marketing expenses. Whereas what an accountant or a bookkeeper would consider a business expense is anything that's required in order for you to run your business on a day-to-day basis. So your rent, your heat, your hydro, your internet connection, anything that's required in terms of product, service, etc. So those are operating expenses because you can't run your business without them. I would challenge you that organic social media is, from a accounting perspective, an operating expense. In 2021, heading into 2022, if this pandemic taught us anything, if we didn't already know, organic social is an operating expense. It is literally expense of time or expense of money. It is a requirement in order to run your business successfully. It's like, I just saw this out of the corner of my eye. It's like someone saying, well, what's the ROI of your smartphone? Well, I can't determine the ROI of my smartphone because we all know that without this, we can't run our businesses or effectively run our organizations. So there is no return on investment for it. It's just necessary. And so I would challenge you to look at organic social the same way, that it is in fact necessary. Now, in terms of measuring ROI, yes, we can do that with paid social significantly more easily, and that is certainly one of the benefits. So again, I don't necessarily consider that a con, but it's sort of the requirement that is necessary in order to keep your brand top of mind and in order to build that sense of community. Organic social is going to be required. So then we flip the script and talk about paid social. So paid social is what I like to call the sprint. And again, there's nothing wrong with a marathon and there's nothing wrong with a sprint. Part of what I want you to look at today is determining which option is best for your business in order to determine that, or what combination of the two, marathon or sprint, are going to be right for your business. So the pros of paid social are that you have a set budget, whether your budget is $50, $500, $5,000, you get to set that budget. There are also clearly defined goals, which goes back to, I believe it was Nicole who said, people weren't clicking or going through to the link or whatever. So clearly defined goals are important. And you get to tell Facebook and or Instagram what your goals are when you're running a paid campaign. So that piece of the puzzle is going to be important. You can't just run it blindly, but clearly defined goals are important, and paid social allows you to do that. You also have a set timeline. So whether your timeline is a week, a month, 3 months, you can set a timeline for that campaign as well as that budget. And then point number 4, at the end of that timeline, you will have easily determined effectiveness. So if you've spent $100 and your goal was clicks on your website, and you have that set for 1 month, for example, at the end of your 1 month, you can see exactly how many people clicked on your website, how many clicks you got for your $100, and that effectiveness is easily determined. And then you know whether you have to adjust or not. So the cons are that paid social is, for the most part, short term. Again, you're setting a timeline, whether it's a week, a month, 3 months. It is, in fact, a short-term campaign. It can be expensive, and click rates can fluctuate, which I'll come back to in a minute. It also requires time and knowledge to monitor and adjust. So I consider some of these cons simply because it's one more thing for you as a business owner or someone managing social for a charity or a community organization. It's one more thing on your plate to know. And we know from session number 1 that we're already feeling social media overwhelmed. So the time, knowledge to monitor and adjust is an important factor, because paid social is not just, I'd like to boost this post, here's an extra $50 and click on boost. Most social media experts or agencies that are running paid social campaigns for you will run a minimum of 3 to 6 ads at a time, different visuals, different types of content, whether it's visual, whether it's a graphic post or video. They will have different captions. They will deliver it to different social networks, and they will be doing what's called split testing or A/B testing, which means they're going to run all 6 of those ads for you. They're going to monitor them for 2 weeks, and then they're going to see which ads are performing well, which ads are not performing well. They're going to shut down the poorly performing ads. They're going to move your budget to the well-performing ads so that for the next few weeks, you get the most bang for your buck. And learning to do that is absolutely something that you can learn how to do yourself, but it does require time and knowledge. And as you run those campaigns, you have to consistently monitor and adjust them. You can't just throw your 50 bucks at it, hope for the best, and then look at the results at the end. And again, for a lot of small business owners, that's a con because that's time and energy that they just don't have. Back to point number 2 in the cons about click rates fluctuating. I just want to point this out. Click rates fluctuate. It's not necessarily a con depending on when you're advertising, but I liken the price of advertising, specifically on Facebook and Instagram, to gas prices. And what I mean by that is time of day, time of year, gas station, all determine how much you're going to pay for your gas. So I'm going to look at the 3 faces that I see top of my screen here, which is myself, Kelly, and Jeanette. So if I went to the gas station this morning and put $50 in my tank, Kelly went to the gas station at noon, put $50 in her tank, and Jeanette went to the gas station at 5 o'clock and put $50 in her tank. At the end of the day, all 3 of us have spent $50 on gas. But depending on what station we went to, and the fact that the gas prices are literally rolling like this on their signs in terms of pricing, the amount of gas that we each got for our $50 is going to be different. And that's how I like to look at ad rates and click rates. Ad prices increase at peak times of year. So if you're advertising in November and December, along with almost everybody else on the planet, you're going to pay more for your ads on a per click basis. So you might still determine that your budget is $50, which is fine, but you're going to get fewer clicks and you're going to get less exposure for your $50 in November and December, as opposed to what you may get in February or March, for example. So the 2 peak times to really be aware of, it doesn't mean you shouldn't advertise at these times, but it's just something to be aware of. The 2 super peak times to be aware of are, of course, the holidays, November, December, as well as back to school. August, September are real peak advertising times. So just something to keep in mind. So I want to move along now to talk about analytics, because a lot of you had a lot of questions even in the previous sessions for that. And before we do that, I'm going to ask you to pop into the chat again, if you don't mind, and if you have a minute. In terms of measuring analytics or insights for your social channels, I'm just curious if you are not measuring, why you're not measuring. And if you are measuring, what is the most confusing or most challenging part of looking at those analytics on a monthly basis? If you're comfortable sharing in the chat, please do so before we dive into the analytics and insights. And while you're typing, I will also just remind everyone that if we don't get to your question, or if you do have a more in-depth question, I'm always open to assisting you with that. So don't hesitate to send me an email at the end of the session if we're not able to address you appropriately at the moment. Okay, so Dawn says, I like the analytics. Good for you. They're straightforward. And I know the demographic my ad is reaching. Fantastic. So that's specifically for ad demographic, and that is absolutely one of the things that you should be looking at. Knowing who your ad is reaching and targeting it appropriately is very important. So I don't know if anyone else is popping in there about the analytics. If you do have comments about what some of your challenges are, please feel free to share them. If not, we'll move along just so we can get our topics covered. So social media analytics and insights. Now, for the purposes of this particular workshop, we're talking specifically about Facebook and Instagram. So where you are going to find some of these on other social networks, if you happen to be posting regularly on Twitter or LinkedIn, for example, where you're going to find them is different. We're specifically speaking about Facebook and Instagram for today. So the social media analytics and insights are located in the Insights tab of your Facebook Business Suite. So the nice thing about this, if you're using Facebook Business Suite, you can connect your Instagram account to the Facebook Business Suite. And so instead of having to go 2 places for 2 sets of metrics, you can go into your Facebook Business Suite, click on the Insights tab, and it's going to pull metrics from both Facebook and Instagram, and you're going to have it all on one screen. So let's talk about the three most common measurements that people tend to look at, why they're important to look at, and why it's important to dive a smidge deeper. So reach. Reach is the number of individual people who saw content from your page. Impressions is the number of times your content was delivered to and or viewed in the newsfeed. And engagements, which is the number of likes, comments, shares, or clicks your content received. So let's talk about those first two specifically. I think engagements is fairly self-explanatory. There is sometimes confusion between reach and impressions. So I just want to clarify those. So reach is the number of individual people who saw your content, whereas impressions is going to be the number of times your content was viewed. So at a baseline example, let's say me as Peggy, a personal user of Facebook, is following the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce. And let's say the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce posts 5 times this week, and I see all of their posts. So that would be a reach of 1, because I am one person who saw content from your page. But it would be 5 impressions because I saw content from your page 5 times. So what that means is that your impression numbers will always be higher than your reach numbers. Impressions, again, is the number of times your content has been viewed, whereas reach is the number of individual people who saw that content. Both are important, but it's just important to make that differentiation between the two. Now, a lot of times these three, reach, impressions, and engagement, you'll hear a lot of social media experts call these vanity metrics. And while yes, they can be considered vanity metrics, they're only vanity metrics if you take them at face value and don't dive into analyzing them and taking action on them. So let's use some round numbers and say that you've pulled your report and you see for the month of November that your reach is 1,000 people. Okay, so you're going to see your reach is 1,000 people. You're going to pat yourself on the back, think that's fantastic, and move on with your day. That's what makes it a vanity metric, because if you don't analyze that deeper, then you won't necessarily know what those 1,000 people thought of or did with your content. So then you need to go down to your engagement. So if you reached 1,000 people this month, but you got like 0, 1, 2 engagements, for example, again, this is an extreme example, but let's just say that, then you should maybe stop patting yourself on the back for those that reaching 1,000 people, because what then you're seeing as you dive a bit deeper is that it's wonderful that you reached 1,000 people, but no one took any action on your content. So no one clicked, no one liked, no one commented, no one shared. And so taking that next step and really analyzing and taking action is key. So it's considered a vanity metric if you're looking at the nice numbers and congratulating yourself and walking away. But there's no vanity involved if you dive deeper. So if you do have that 1,000-person reach, but no engagements, then that's going to require some analysis on your part. Why is this content not resonating with your clients or your followers? What do you need to do? What do you need to tweak? What do you need to adjust? Maybe you don't necessarily know who your followers are and the type of content that is going to resonate with them. So taking that deeper dive is important. Looking at these numbers, especially on what I would say at least a monthly basis, is important, but then analyzing and taking action on what those numbers mean is key. And speaking of keys, one of the key pieces of information, several actually key pieces of information I'm going to cover here on our next slide, and they are your engagement rate and your audience reports. So the engagement rate, now we just talked about engagement. So engagement is a hard number. If your engagement is 500, that means 500 times during the past month, someone liked, clicked, commented, shared. So engagement is a hard number. Your engagement rate is a percentage. And it can be calculated monthly when you're looking at your analytics, or on a per post basis, totally up to you. And it is calculated by taking your number of engagements divided by your number of impressions and multiplying it by 100. So those of us who hate math have to do some math, but it's an important percentage to get. And it's also important, a lot of times clients come to me and they're feeling defeated because their engagement rates are what they perceive to be quite low. But it's important to point out that anything above 1% is considered good on Facebook, and anything between 1 and 3.5% is considered good on Instagram. So these are really important numbers to keep in mind. And also, it's important to bear in mind that as you grow your following, it is in fact more difficult to keep your engagement rates healthy. So we talked about some of those growth hacks in our last session and how people are so aggressively trying to grow their account and get more followers. I would caution you that you have to be careful what you wish for, because the more followers you have, the more difficult it is to keep a healthy engagement rate. And just for comparative purposes, when we're talking about Facebook there, anything above 1% is considered good. McDonald's, which we all know, has been around for thousands of years, and well, not really, but it seems like that, and certainly has a handle on their marketing. McDonald's has an average Facebook engagement rate of 2.5%. So if you're calculating your engagement rate and you're falling above that 1%, keep in mind that McDonald's is approximately 2.5. When it comes to Instagram, between 1 and 3.5% is considered good. So some big brands there to think about. Victoria's Secret has an Instagram engagement rate of 1.7%. BMW's is 3.7%. So it's something to bear in mind. They have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of followers. But what that means is the more followers you have, the more pressure there is to get larger numbers of people to engage with that content. So keeping in mind what some of those big brands are doing in terms of engagement and knowing what is considered good on the social networks that you're utilizing is going to be really, really important. The next thing that I want to chat with you about briefly is audience reports. Audience reports are a lifetime report. And that means that it changes as your following grows. So what your audience report looks like now, 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now is going to be different. The report is located again in Business Suite, and it pulls both Facebook and Instagram data, which is very helpful. The metrics include age, gender, geographic demographics, and this is really important information to inform your content decisions. So if we talk about the example from the previous slide, if you reached 1,000 people last month, but you didn't get any engagement, then looking at your audience report is going to be really important, because maybe you're, pumping out the content and you think it's great, but if it's not resonating with your audience, then who is your audience? Do you really know who your audience is? Or are you creating and writing content for who you think your audience is, or for who you hope your audience is? So really knowing who your audience is going to be really important. And I have a fantastic example of this. One of our clients is an insurance brokerage in Waterdown. We've been working with them for almost a year now. And of course, insurance is like that universal product, right? You can be 16 years old with your first driver's license, or 85 years old and living in a condo, and you still need insurance. So it's literally the type of product that can be sold to any age, any gender, any geographic, like everybody needs insurance. So this client came to us knowing who his geographic target was, but basically saying that he was targeting anyone in this massive age range. So while that in fact may be true, trying to pump out content or create content that will appeal to all of those ages and all of those demographics is near impossible. So we looked at this audience report, and he was very surprised, as were we, to find that 85% of the Facebook followers for this particular insurance brokerage are in fact female. That's super important information for us as social media managers and strategists to have, because that informs the type of decisions that we make for his content. If we know 85% of the people who are looking at his content are female, then we write for a female-centric audience. We design for a female-centric audience. We choose stock images for a female-centric audience. That is super important information. And it's information that has to be revisited. Again, we look at it every 3 months, because if you gain 50 followers, using that account as an example, if he gained 50 followers and all 50 of them were male, well, then that percentage is going to skew, and then we may have to adjust our strategy. So in my opinion, the audience reports are arguably one of the most important pieces of data to consistently review and take action on. Absolutely. They're going to be top of mind for you to pull now. And again, it's a lifetime report, so it just always continuously changes. Something that quarterly, I would probably suggest you taking a look at. And then in terms of your content, I just want to, before I know there's some questions that I'm seeing here, and I also want to make sure that we have time to address those. But I want to address all of you first of all, because this next slide is the content assignment. And so if you've been here for the last 2 sessions, you know that we've done this before, which is giving you some really effective and community-driven ways to get your content seen and shared by sharing your experiences in these sessions. You guys have done such a great job. And I want you, from a metrics perspective, you should go back and look at some of those posts that were shared in stories, and see the expanded reach and the expanded number of impressions that they got, because you tagged the appropriate accounts, and because you used the appropriate hashtags, and because they were then shared by the Social Gourmet, by the Lincoln Chamber, by Downtown Bench Beamsville. It's a really great and super easy way to get that content shared. So if you've done this before, I totally encourage you to do it again, because we're still sharing them. I know Jeanette and Emma from the Chamber are sharing them as well, because we love to see them. If you haven't done one, grab that mug, take a screenshot of the presentation, or take a quick picture and tag those relevant accounts. Social Gourmet, Lincoln Chamber, Downtown Bench Beamsville. Use the Your Hometown Holiday hashtag and just get some added exposure for your business, and tell people a little bit about what you're doing and how you've spent your day. You don't have to do that now. If you have time later in the day, that's fine as well. So before we dive into the questions, this time always goes so fast for me. I hope it does for you as well. In conclusion, you need to know your audience. You need to know your numbers. And then you need to take that information and adjust your strategy, both paid and organic, accordingly. And a little bit of bias here in this quote, you can tell I'm more a fan of organic social than paid, because I totally believe in this, what Richard Branson says, which is that succeeding in business is all about making connections. So thank you all very much. Let's go into the Q&A session. And there were some questions that I did see that came up earlier in the chat. If you have questions that you haven't already put in the chat with regards to organic social, paid social, from an analytics perspective, how to find things, where to find things, if they are specific to your business, please feel free to ask them. If it's something that I think maybe that we need to address either privately or in a one-on-one session, then we can certainly look at this, look at that as well. So the one thing that I'm just going to address from early on that Dawn had mentioned from the Pilates experience, Dawn said that her boosted Facebook post doesn't always get put on Instagram, and I can't seem to control that. So it depends on, there's a few things here. And again, I'd need to look at your ad or your post specifically, Dawn, but there are certain types of posts that will only deliver to one platform or the other. So that may be the issue. The other thing is, again, and everybody hates when I tell them to read the rules and regs again, but I might suggest reading the rules and regs, because it might not be something, huge, like a huge rule that you're breaking, but it may be something small and minor that just needs a tweak. Sometimes, one word needs to be tweaked, and then all of a sudden it works. So I'd suggest looking into that. So Kelly from the Lincoln Public Library is asking, would you recommend targeting paid social to demographics who may not be part of your current following? Okay, so, oh my gosh, I could literally talk for the next hour about this. So I'm going to give you the short version. And the short version is that it really depends what your goals are. So you need to remember that your current following is always, and we talked about this in previous sessions, your current following is a really valuable resource. So targeting your current following is something that I always tend to recommend. However, if your goal is to have more people learn from a library perspective about resources, programming, etc., then absolutely targeting outside of your current current following is something that you can certainly look at. One of the things that might be an option for the library specifically, one of the targeting options, and you get in there for targeting, if you're just boosting, you get half a dozen options. If you're in Ads Manager targeting, like it's literally like diving into the netherworld of demographics, and there's 1,001 things that you can target. One of the things that I like that's fairly simple is that you can target ads, and I believe boosted posts, but don't quote me on that, to friends of your current followers. So what that means is like 2 degrees of separation instead of just a cold audience. So if you're targeting people who are already friends with your followers, then they may have already seen Lincoln Public Library's content because their friend Peggy commented on it last night or shared the kids' resource yesterday morning, and then they see the post come up as an ad in their feed. They're like, oh, I remember Peggy posted about that this morning. I should look at that too. So that's one sort of interesting step to take. That is, again, that sort of 1 degree of separation. But yeah, the long answer is that there are, in fact, absolute pros and cons to both of those, and determining your goals are going to be absolutely imperative right out of the gate. Even if it's just a boosted post, what's your goal? If you're going to put $50 behind this, what's your goal of spending that $50? You need to know that. So I hope on some basic level that answered your question. Yay, thumbs up. Okay. So Dawn's sort of extrapolating here on her previous question. So she says, I can use the exact same post with a different video, and one is placed on Instagram and the other is not. Okay, so to be honest with you, Dawn, without seeing that, I'm not sure I can answer that question because I'm not sure what the issue is. It's I mean, there could be several issues. It could be a formatting issue for size of video that would display, in this ratio on Facebook and this ratio on Instagram. It could be that it's not fitting. It could be music, where the rights for music differ on Instagram than they do. So there are a few, if not 100 reasons that could be. So yeah, size of video is potentially a factor. So I would look at that. Those are kind of the off the top of my head things, but yeah, and a lot of times all it takes is a simple request to have your ad reviewed. Sometimes that's not the easy answer, and sometimes it does require more in-depth analysis, either on your part or from someone at Facebook. But a lot of times, if your ad is rejected, if you ask them to review your ad and explain why, sometimes a bot reviews it, which is not helpful. And sometimes a real human from Facebook reviews it, and that is actually helpful. And a lot of times you can get them overturned. There are certain types of businesses where it is more challenging. Friends of ours own an archery range, which is clearly not dangerous weaponry or any kind of, dangerous situation. It's actually a very safe environment. But they have a lot of difficulty with paid ads simply because archery equipment is considered weapons, regardless of the fact that it's happening in a safe environment. So there are sometimes, depending on the type of business that you have, sometimes there are factors, but a lot of times if you request a review and explain why, they will overturn it. We've had this, especially in real estate. I'm not sure we have any realtors. I'm just checking my list. I don't think we have any realtors today. Anything with regards to real estate or government and politics now has separate rules and regulations for ads, but a lot of times all you have to do is request the review. So we were running an ad for clients of ours in Burlington who were selling a condo unit in retirement adults only building. Facebook typically says across the board, if you're advertising housing, you can't say it's only for this demographic or only for this demographic. You can't exclude people from housing. So initially the ad was rejected, but a quick explanation and link to the building, the condo building website itself. I'm getting an Amazon delivery if we're not hearing the dog announcing that. Is all it took to explain to the folks at Facebook, sorry, that totally distracted me. I apologize to the folks at Facebook that this building is in fact a retirement community. It is a 65 plus building. And then the hold on our ad was released and it was able to be put through. So sometimes it's very simple. It can be stressful when you see that, you know, your ad was rejected. You're like, oh, one more thing for me to worry about. But sometimes it's very simple to get it back up and running. Do we have any more questions? These are, much like I said last week, these topics about organic and paid social and the analytics specifically are really deep dive topics. And with 40 minutes, we have to take a shallow dive into the deep dive topic. Yeah, we can cover as much as we can. What exactly is a distribution? Okay, so Kelly's asking a distribution score. So the distribution, you know what, this is a metric. Oh, there's a lot of metrics that are helpful. I'm not sure this one is only because, no, I should quantify that. Not that it's not helpful, but the distribution score factors in with impressions and reach. So we talked about reach and impressions. So I should back that up and not say that it's not helpful. But I think it just muddies the water because it's essentially the same thing with a fancy new name. So when you think about reach and impressions, those are the ones that you're really going to want to look at, because your distribution score is basically going to be a rating with regards to that. So those reach and impression numbers, again, are, as opposed to someone scoring your business, those reach and impression numbers are the specific and distinct numbers that you want. So if you've reached 1,000 people and you've had 2,000 impressions and your engagement is this, then those are the metrics that you'll need to deep dive in, as opposed to the distribution score, which is kind of like a compilation of all of those things. And here's your number. Okay, well, that's one number that doesn't give you any further sort of deep dive information for you to analyze. And so I would suggest using the more specific reach, impression, engagement rate numbers, as opposed to just the one-off distribution score. And again, analyzing that. So not just taking those numbers at face value as vanity metrics, but actually diving into what they mean, and then apply them to your audience report too, right? So we'll use the same examples. If you reached 1,000 people, congratulations. But if you didn't get any engagement, then that's a problem. So then I would look at your audience report. And so if your audience report says, much like this client that I referenced, that 85% of your audience is female and in a certain age demographic, but you've been speaking and and or writing and or creating content that mostly speaks to, you know, a different age demographic, a different gender demographic, then that's some adjustments that are going to be need to be taken into account. So it's important to use all of the information together to have an impact on the decisions that you make from a marketing perspective going forward. All right, are there any more questions? If so, I'm happy to answer them over the course of the next few minutes. If not, then we are able to wrap things up. I'll give you another few seconds to see if there's any further questions. If not, and I apologize in advance, not in advance. I apologize after the fact for the barking dog. Thank you, Kelly. All right, so let's move on then to our very last slide, and thank you. I need to thank several of you. This is the final workshop in our series, so thank you for spending your Thursday mornings with us for the past 3 weeks. For those of you that have been here for all of the sessions, thank you so much. If you haven't, please watch the Lincoln Chamber's website for the recordings. I very much appreciate that. Thank you again to the town of Lincoln, Lincoln Chamber, Downtown Bench, Beamsville for inviting the Social Gourmet to be a part of this campaign. We have absolutely loved sharing our Thursday mornings with you. Thank you specifically to Jeanette for all her hard work on this campaign. Yay, Jeanette, thank you so much. Also, as I mentioned previously, if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me via email. If there's anything that we can do to help you with your social media or your marketing, I'd be happy to start that conversation with you as well. Most of you know that reviews are such an important piece of the puzzle for small businesses, especially at this time. So if you have a few minutes today and you can find some kind words to say about the Social Gourmet, we would love a Google or Facebook review from you. That would be very much appreciated. I will look forward to continuing to see all of your content. We're following all of you on Instagram now, no pressure, but we're looking forward to watching you implement some of these, some of the things that you've learned. Thank you again for your time. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, however you choose to celebrate. I'm going to make an odd request and ask that you log off of social media for a few days and take some time to yourself. So happy holidays. Thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a relaxing holiday.